Hi, I'm Rocket, and welcome to a Whiteboarding with Rocket. In today's session, I am going to walk you through all the components, well, let me qualify that, most of the components you need to do a live whiteboarding in a video conference. All right, so I'll qualify that as well. The idea here and the purpose behind live whiteboarding, there's a couple of purposes, right? There is, I have drawn a whiteboard and I'm going to present to you for feedback. There is, I am going to draw a whiteboard out and explain it to you, right? That's those kind of that present for feedback. There's a couple of variations there. You have a preformed whiteboard you're presenting, or you're going to draw it out and make sure you get it right as you go along. The other purpose would be to capture a discussion. And this is one I use quite a bit, is I will be on the whiteboard and listening to a call and having somebody else like focusing the discussion on things, and I'll be capturing the salient points or any architectures or diagrams that help draw it out in a way that is visually representing what's being talked about. So live whiteboarding can be very effective. There are some challenges to it. To get a live whiteboarding session where you can interact and see the people on the other side, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of equipment, and I frankly haven't solved it yet. I know how to do it, but what I'm missing is an effective, non-reflective surface, right? My computer's way on the other side of the room, and I need to have a display right under the camera so I can see people. Do I do it using some kind of teleprompter setup? Right, and that all of a sudden increases the weight load on the camera, and I'm gonna have to do a bunch of stuff there. Longer story. So just recognize that one of the downsides is going to be there is some degradation in the interactivity with the rest of the team. If you're able to capture most everything while listening, you can have a nice speakerphone, you can have Bluetooth headsets, and you can do almost anything that way. All right, let me walk you through all the moving parts of live whiteboarding setups. So first of all, you need a whiteboard, right? Lots of setups here. You can have one mounted on the wall, you can have a rolling one. There's different formats, there's different sizes, there's all sorts of different ways to do this. You could even have one that is, it's a big piece of paper, and you could use mounting arms and have it aimed down. There's a lot of different ways to do this. I will be testing at some point in the near future, hopefully this month, a non-reflective version that I've ordered that's a little bit larger than this. And ideally, I would be able to put better lighting up here. This is decent lighting, but I want to take it to the next level. I want to be able to set that, be able to see people on the other side and not have it reflect on here. So lots of different things coming, but that's the number one thing is, of course, you need a whiteboard. You need a camera to aim at the whiteboard, and there's multiple options here. One of them is just a webcam. Either comes in your computer, you buy one, stick it on top, stick it on a little tripod or something, and you aim it at the whiteboard. One of the challenges you're going to have is if you want to be able to switch between, I'm sitting in front of the camera and I'm switching to the whiteboard, there's some more sophisticated things you might have to do. It could very well be that just flipping the laptop around or just taking your webcam and aiming it at something is good enough. Often that is. HDMI camera, you can get, there's very nice HDMI cameras. The number one thing you need is clean HDMI out. So making sure you're looking for cameras that have an HDMI output and you can set it to clean. Those are both big. The other one is if you're gonna kind of hard mount something or mount it in a place that you wanna stay there, you've gotta make sure you can get dummy power, where you can power the camera so that you don't have to worry about charging batteries and all that kind of stuff. That's another one. You can also do the same thing with a camcorder, right? And depending on how you want to do this, Camcorder is going to give you a fixed focal length, an HDMI, a mirrorless or DSLR camera is going to give you some more ability to do, focusing, a little more depth of field. There's some other things you get, but it's really up to you which one you want. And then another option is an iPad or an iPhone. Those are very much possibilities, and you could mount that and that's a very easy setup, and you could even have interactivity with it if you do it right. If you mount the iPad in a place where you can see the participants on the other side and you're sharing your video, that might work even more effectively in some of this other stuff. Okay, so you need to mount these somehow, and a webcam right on top of the laptop or on top of your monitor. That's easy enough. If you need a tripod, you can set one up, give it a little bit of height or whatever, mobility. There's an arm and a clamp, so there's some really nice clamps out there that you clamp it on there and you get it nice and solid. You get an arm that lets you move things around. I've got several of those, and they're invaluable. And then, of course, you've got an iPad or an iPhone mount. So you can put this on top of a tripod or on top of an arm, a mounted arm, and it can hold it in place and keep it safe. So few options here. Then, your capture card. So if you've got a webcam, it's going USB straight into your into your laptop, and that should be just fine, right? You don't need to do anything super extra about that. But if you've got an HDMI camera or a webcam, you've got a couple of different options. One, you need to take that HDMI out, and you need to go through some kind of device that converts it into the computer so that it can become a webcam on your computer. And there's very inexpensive HDMI to USB capture cards. They're little adapters, and you can get one of those, and there you go. You could have your internal camera on your you could have a webcam that's USB, and you could have this other one that's through there, and you could switch between them. Now, one of the things I found, this was early on, things have gotten better, but I found my different video conferencing solutions would crash when I tried to switch between them in the middle of a call. And the stability was a little off. Now that's changed quite a bit, so I'm not excusing that, but what it led me to do is explore Open Broadcast Software, or OBS. And that allowed me to have multiple inputs and switch between them. And there's a whole host of things about that software, and it can do some pretty amazing things, overlays, and So I'm not going to go too far into that. There's way too many YouTube things out there for me to try and give you anything other than pointers. And then there's what I ended up with, and I'm very, very happy with it, which is a Blackmagic ATEM Mini. This is an inexpensive device. There's a 4-port, 4 HDMI input one that's less than $300. There's a new one that's got 8 inputs, which I'm going to end up going to because it turns out I need more inputs. I didn't realize it's at the beginning, but that's fine. I'm going to be able to take the small one and use it as a mobile or hand it down to somebody. But you can do some really amazing things. So you've got your main camera, you've got your whiteboard camera. If you have more than one whiteboard, you can have that. If you have like an Apple TV, or your output of your laptop can go into it and then come back and be shared. A lot of flexibility. It's your level of complexity increases the more things you do here, and it simplifies a lot of the operation inside the laptop. So inside the laptop, your ATEM Mini, you plug it using USB-C, you plug it into your laptop, and it looks like a webcam. It also looks like a sound device, and that's for another conversation. You can just use whatever you use normally for sound. You don't have to have a microphone hooked up to this. All right, but there's your 3 main options as I've seen them. Now the iPad doesn't need this, right? The iPad, it's its own thing, and it does not necessarily need to get hooked into the laptop. You can do iPad in a couple of different ways. You could do an iPad into a physical switch, right? You could also do iPad into your computer if you've got a Mac, and then use something like QuickTime to share your iPad. That feels a little bit too cumbersome instead of just taking your iPad and sticking it on a mount, and that feels a lot easier, and that's been my experience as well. Now your audio can get there's a lot of variations with audio, and it's incredibly important for live whiteboarding that you have good audio. Now the easiest thing to do, of course, is to have your headphones, your Bluetooth, if you've got AirPods or Bose or whatever, and you're using those and you've hooked into your computer or into your software that's doing video conference, that's probably the easiest thing. Now there's other options like speakerphones, like the Jabra 710. It's a very nice thing. You can have multiple, so you can have some balance. And what I found was I ended up with two because I'm sitting at my desk and the speakerphone's right there. I'm doing this and the sound's coming from over there, and I end up turning over there and talking to the speakerphone, and it's a bit of ways away. So I've got one closer here, and that way I'm talking more naturally to it, and it's allowing me to balance the sound and do a few other things. So let's walk through one or two examples of this just to bring it home. All right, so I've got a whiteboard, right? I've got an iPad. I get some mounting arm that has an iPad mount on it. I put it up there and I can aim it at my whiteboard, and I can hit join a call, share my video, and people are seeing this. And if I do it right, I can actually be seeing the people on the call at the same time, right? But I have to use the front-facing camera, which isn't always super as high quality as others. But if I need more interactivity, that's a great way to do it. The other thing that I didn't cover is when I went through this is lighting. All right. Now lighting is important if you want to make sure people can see what's going on. And I ended up with a fill light that's coming from up here and another bounce light which comes up off the ceiling and comes down a little bit. It's not great because it's okay, it's good, it's decent. I'm not complaining about it. The one thing that's missing is if I really want to fill in my face on a live whiteboard, you're going to get a lot of reflection off of this kind of whiteboard. So that's going to be one of the tricky things, and that's going to be based on your own setup. Because if you don't have a lot of space, right, putting in lights and stuff, it's going to be hard. My recommendation, if you don't have a lot of space, I'd start with the iPad or even your iPhone, or you could even do it with Android, and get some mounting arms and stick it up there and see if you can get some decent interactivity going. All right, that's a pretty quick way to do it. The laptop is another way to do it, and get a mounting thing to have raise the laptop up and be able to aim it at the whiteboard. There's a few other things. All right, so let's go with, so there's two kinds of lights, right? There's what I'll call the ring light, which is your face light. And that's if you're sitting at your desk, and that's not always necessary when it comes to this. And then there's this, I call it fill light, but there's the ability to light up the whiteboard in a way that it doesn't feel like you're looking at something dark. And that's another piece of important, make sure that you can get white balance on your cameras. If you've got a camcorder or an HDMI camera, make sure you set your white balance so you're not super dark. You got the right, then there's all this camera talk, which I end up going, okay, I understand it, but I'm just going to put this thing on auto, and there's a little set the white balance thing, and I'm done. That usually is enough for this. Sometimes I want to get a little bit more fun with it, but most of the time I try and keep it as simple as possible on that side of it. So if I had a camera sitting around, who has a camera sitting around? I don't know. I happen to have one that I've been using for a while and found out that it had a clean HDMI out, and I mounted it, and it became awesome. There was a lot of really great things about it that turned it into this. So I definitely, and there's a lot of used ones out there right now that'll have that clean HDMI out. It doesn't have to be 4K, right? It could be HD, right? Because for live whiteboarding, this thing's going out over their network. So 4K is really hard. You need really serious bandwidth to make that work. Right, I think I've covered most of the moving parts here, and hopefully this has been useful. I'm Rocket. This has been another Whiteboarding with Rocket.